All right, welcome Year 10. This is just to go through the work that you'll be doing today, basically. So what you'll do is you'll find all the work that you need to work through here in your OneNote. So I will have distributed this to your cultural comprehension file, and you'll find it all there. Now I will go into here and we will start it from here. The first thing for you guys to do is to find out what contrast is in terms of it being a language feature. So you can pause this video, go into Google, and then on your OneNote, copy in what the definition is. If you're not sure, that's the best way to do it. If you think you know what contrast is, then just write in what you think it means. All right, assuming that you have paused the video, found out what it means, I'm just going to go through what it means now as well. So if you didn't get anything, you can copy this in. So ultimately, when we're talking about language features, we're talking about looking at a text, whether it is something written or something visual. When we talk about contrast, what we mean is that there are two different things. Oh, I spelled two wrong. Whoopsie daisies. So there are two different things or ideas being described or presented in a text. So that means something that may be in the space of a paragraph, or it may be in two scenes if we're talking about a film or something. So we're introducing two quite different things. And the effect of that is that we compare those two different things, and then we can gain or learn or think or feel something as a result of having those differences. So you might describe something really positive, and then in the next paragraph or within the same paragraph, describe something quite negative. Or if we're thinking about a film, they might show a really happy scene and the next scene's really sad or intense or action-packed. And so that forces us to compare and then contrast those two different things. And that might show us two different experiences of two different people, or the two different sides of someone's life, or something like that. So contrast is something that we can talk about. So if we're reading something and we see two very different things shown in the same paragraph or early in the text and then different at the end of the text, then that's something we can talk about. So that's an important language feature to know, because it comes up in the text that we've just read. So the aim today is to build through a long answer response. So you have done reading comprehension many moons ago now, so you would have done this in your end of year exam, and you would have had a paragraph that you wrote. So you read a text, you answered some multi-choice, you answered some short answer, and now you've got a long answer. So this is what we're going to work with today. So you have read that short text White Tiger. If you've forgotten about it, go back into my other YouTube video and listen to the story again, or read through the story in your booklet again. If you don't have the physical copy of the booklet, the digital is on OneNote, and the digital is also in class materials on Teams as well. So there's no excuse for not having it. So what you're going to do is read that again, and then you are going to answer this long answer question. So the question is in bold there. Explain how the writer has used language features to explore a different culture. All right. Explain how the writer has used language features to explore a different culture. You may wish to consider the scenery, so that's the setting and the description of the setting, the use of descriptive language, the narrator's experience. So the narrator is the person telling the story. So you need to ensure that your response, which is your paragraph, addresses the question, includes specific evidence or quotations, makes reference to language features or feature, and explains how they create an effect. All right, so that's what you're going to do. You're going to write a long answer or response. If you feel like you know how to do that, you can just kind of skip on through and do that. But for most of you, I'd recommend just following along with the video as I sort of step you through how to do that, because then you're going to do a better job and it's going to work better for your revision of the standard as well. So you'll see these in your OneNote, and you'll see some blanks. So now you're going to fill in the blanks as I go through it. So as a recap, what do we know goes in a long answer? Or what do we know goes for long answer questions? When we're answering a long answer question, which is that one that we just got there in the bold, we need to have a point. So some form of answer to the statement. Here, the statement's about a different culture. We're going to be making a point about what we learn about the different culture. We need evidence or an example, and that is a quote. So that's where we directly copy the words from the text. We need a language feature or a technique. Okay, so that's metaphor, listing, simile, adjectives, that sort of thing. We need to explain what that evidence shows and how it shows it, so how that language has been used. And then we should also directly address the writer's purpose, what they're trying to make us think about or feel as a reader. So those are all the things that we should ideally be looking at. Last year, you might have used the acronym PETE or PETA. So they're the same thing: point, evidence, technique, explanation, or point, evidence, technique, explanation, and reference to purpose, or reference to author, or reference to self. So you might have learnt those acronyms. That's the same thing. If those acronyms work really well for you, then go with that. If you use something like PEAL, which is what you use for your paragraphs, point, explanation, evidence, link, same thing. Just got a technique or a language feature in there. All right, if those work for you, that's fine. This is just a recap of them. So the first thing you need to do is ask yourself, how has the writer explored a different culture? What have they shown us about a different culture in that story, White Tiger? All right, so pause the video. If you need to, go back to the story again. If you don't, just try having a think about it. What does the writer explore about different cultures? All right, assuming that you've had to think about that now, if you haven't, pause the video and do that. So assuming you've had to think about it, here are some that I spotted, and you can fill in the blanks for those. So when I read the story, I thought that the writer showed that there are two very different sides to India, something quite pretty and light, they refer to it as, and something quite ugly or gross, which is darkness. And it talks about that in the story, how there are two different sides. So that's what I think they've explored. I think they've also shown that the river Ganges can be quite gross. All right, that's what I've learned about a different culture. There are some gross sides to it. I've learned that there are different ways to experience death. So the funeral, or I guess it was a funeral, for his mother is very different to how I've experienced death and funerals. And I've also got from the very end of the story that there are different ways to think about life. All right, so different cultures think about life in different ways. So they think about death and they think about life in different ways. So the writer has explored a different culture by showing me these 4 different things. If you've got something else, that's great. If you've got something that they show that the different culture teaches you something else, then that's great. You can go with your own one. These are ones just to get you going if you're a bit stuck. Right, so then you've got to have some evidence. So what I've done here is I've just taken extracts that I thought helped to show the culture. So I'll just go through them. I'm not going to read them all aloud, but you can pause the video. If you can't see it very clearly, you can probably up the, what do you call it? You know, like put it on like 720p or something, the clarity of the image on it. So you can see the writing a bit clearer. So I thought this first one shows the culture because it shows me the scenery, and I could talk about the culture based on the scenery, because rice fields and wheat fields and lotuses and water buffaloes are very different to my culture and my experience of New Zealand. I thought this quote here shows me a different culture because it shows what the river is like, and it shows it can be gross sometimes. And it also shows us to think about life and death in different ways by here. So I thought that quote was good. This one here has got listing as a language feature, and it shows that the river can be gross. This one here shows a different way of treating death. This one here shows a different way of treating death. Again, it sort of describes what it was like. One here shows the place a little bit more. The fact they've got listing that's got these nice things, but it's also got bones and dogs and things like that. I thought showed the really 2 different sides of the scenery, and it also makes me think about death. And this last quote here made me think about life. So this sort of short sentence and stuff like that I thought helped show me life. So those were some quotes that I thought were good. So you can go back and pause this and take little bits of it. You wouldn't use this whole extract for each of them. Obviously, I wouldn't write all of that out. I might just take that one line. or I might take this one line here, or something like that. I'm only going to take part of the quote. So you need an example. So those are some examples that might work well. You just need one. Two's good if you're feeling like you can do it. All right, so the next thing to do is basically, once you've decided what you want to focus on, so you might want to focus on one of these things, or your own thing, what you think they show about culture. This one's quite easy. This one's quite easy. You can say that the writer has explored a different culture by showing you the setting. Okay, it's nice and easy. And then you just pick a quote that shows you what India is like based on the text. All right, so when you've done that, you want to write a long answer response. So that's a statement there, that's a question, and this will step you through. So I'll just explain the starters, and then you can go forward and try and write one. If you're unsure, just go back somewhere in this video and watch it again, read the story again. And if you're still really stuck, just come on Teams and I'll answer some questions, or you can email me. So first sentence, the writer has explored a different culture by, and that's where you would put your point. The writer has explored a different culture by showing me the Indian setting. The writer has explored a different culture by showing me how people experience death. The writer has showed a different culture by showing me there are bad sides to the river Ganges. All right, so that's your point. Then what you need to do is state the language feature and write in a quote. The writer explores a different culture when they use metaphor, listing, adjectives, simile, personification, whatever it is. If you're unsure about the language feature, go back to your short answer questions from yesterday, because 2 of those questions were about language features, so you can just use those ones. And if you actually go back about 2 minutes in this video, I showed you the first couple of quotes, and I talked about some language features, which is listing. So this is shown by the quote, and then you write in the quote. And you say the use of, and that's your language feature, so the use of adjectives, simile or metaphor helps to explore a different culture because you explain it there. So that should be 1 to 2 sentences, that explanation. If you feel confident, you can go forward and do a second language feature and a second quote. That's quite tricky. Feel like you can do that, that's great. Let me know if you manage to do that, because you deserve some praise, because that is quite tricky. And then your last sentence, so this one here in the brackets is optional, that's why it's in brackets, but this last sentence you want to try to do. What is the writer trying to make you think about? Or what are the writer trying to make you feel? All right, so that's the next part of it. So you've got those language features, you've got the statement. If you can't find the evidence, go back and pause my video and look at them. If you can't get it from there, go back and read the text again. Or if you answered the short answer questions yesterday, then those will give you 2 language features and you've just got to take 1 of them. So that would work quite easily. So that's what you're going to go forward and do. And hopefully that's relatively straightforward. What I have done here is I've written an example. Okay, so if you're really stuck, at least have a read and a listen to this example, and that should hopefully help. And then maybe you could do your own one with a different quote. So I'll read through this just once so that you get an idea of it. The writer has explored a different culture by showing us how this young Indian man experienced the death of his mother. The writer explores a different culture when they use listing. This is shown by the quote, "My mother's body had been wrapped in head to toe in a saffron silk cloth, which was covered," it should say, "in rose petals and jasmine garlands." The use of listing helps to explore a different culture because in my Pākehā New Zealand culture, we do not typically dress or adorn dead bodies in such a luxurious or pretty way. The listing helps to emphasize how different it is by listing all the different things seen, like cloth, rose petals, and jasmine. So that's my quote and my language features listing, and I've explained how it shows that it's different culture and how the language features help me understand that. The writer's purpose is to show how everyone experiences death in different ways, and that shows us how interesting cultures are because death is something that happens everywhere, but we can treat and celebrate or grieve for it in different ways. So I probably could have written an even shorter sentence there and just said the writer's purpose is to show how everyone experiences death in different ways. But I thought I'd go on and expand and explain my thoughts. So that's why it gets a bit longer. That's something you should always try and do. Rather than just say that it shows that it's different, explain how it shows that, why it shows that, why that might be important or significant. And then I've got one more sentence there, which is me trying to think about the effect that it has on me. So this teaches me to be more accepting of other cultures because one is not good or bad, just different. All right, so that is my exemplar answer. So if you're a little bit stuck, hopefully that explains how to do it. I know it's quite long, but they're always going to be a little bit longer when I do them versus when you do them, because I really like people having detail, and sometimes that's quite tricky. Okay, so that's what you're doing today. Go through, write a long answer response. Use the sentence starters, don't use the sentence starters, see how you go, and then we will see how easy or difficult that was for us. All right, good luck. Let me know how it goes.